silubonile nosizo lwabezizwe sithi enkosi enkosi siyabonga siyabonga nalebuha yenkosi bantabo mntanami ibonakele imisebenzi yethu sibabonile bethu ngabekithizela on June 16, 1976 awusengile mnake sengile khaya waze kwamnandi khaya ho mani bangoma yethu mina kumele ngakhiwe nguwe wena wakhiwe yini thina sonke masakha yebo masakha thina sonke masakha yeso siba mama bomthandazo izonke imithandazo yenu ngoba thina sinjenjenje sinjenjenje emithandazo thina sinjenjenje sinjenjenje emithandazo enkosi zinkokheli enkosi bafundisi bethu sithi ngoba busisulu enkosi babuthambo enkosi enkosi Madiba siyabonga John Dube siyabonga Babuthuli siyabonga Buthelezi mina kumele ngakhiwe nguwe wena wakhiwe thina sonke masakha yebo masakha thina sonke masakha.
Welcome to the third day of the Proudly South African Bi-Local Summit and Expo, and particularly to the second day of the Expo. We have heard amazing insights through the past 2 days, and we're looking forward to the insights that we're hearing today. So if you are a small business and you want to know how to start your business, the funding and everything, this is the place that you should be. So welcome to everybody. Thank you so much, Sizwe, for that video. If you can please switch on your camera and mic so that the audience can see who it is that will address us. Thank you, Sizwe. That was an amazing video, thank you, but it was short. So if you have anything to add to that video before we allow the audience to ask some questions. Audience, to the right of your screen, there is a discuss tab. So please, just above the question and answer tab, type your questions in there, and I will then read them for Sizwe. Sizwe, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pearl, and just to extend our thanks as the National Empowerment Fund to the organizers of this event. And our video is short, and what it really summarizes is what the NEF is about. And as I suggest, it's the Empowerment Fund. And what we mean by that for us is empowerment through funding. Through also investor education, but primarily through providing funding, perhaps for people who want to set up their businesses. If it's a new business, you want to expand your current business, or you want to acquire an existing business, or you have an idea not reached financial close, which means now it's still at research and development stage. So that's what we do, but primarily our interest is Black entrepreneurs, increasing Black participation in the economy. And again, here I just want to mention that it doesn't mean it's to the 100% exclusion of white businesses, but in a sense, if those white businesses partner with black entrepreneurs, then the NEF will to participate in that. But we always ask that the vision of the business or the management, the core of the business is driven by black entrepreneurs. So this is what the NEF is really all about in a nutshell. And this we do through 4 different funds. We've got our Rural Township and Community Development Fund that looks at primarily agricultural agricultural businesses, as well as businesses that are perhaps have a greater impact in terms of community. So your cooperatives, or where the community can club together and in themselves become an economic group that we can look at, and that is done through our Rural and Community Development Fund. We also have our Special Projects Fund. This is what we was discussing earlier. Perhaps we have an idea, an innovative idea that still needs to go through a process of feasibility, research and development before it reaches financial close. So that's the fund we'll look at. The other fund we have is what we call our corporate fund. This is Umnoto Fund. They look at more your new ventures, your acquisitions, as well as expansion. These are your bigger transactions that require larger sums of money for established businesses. And then we have the fund that I'm representing, the SME fund. This is your small and medium enterprises. Again, we look at startups there, generally businesses that will be looking for funding up to 15 million rand. Your franchises are done through this fund, and also smaller acquisitions are done through this fund. And maybe just before I take questions, I will maybe put through few questions that are often asked of us, the people that work at the NEF. One is, how long does it take the NEF to reach finality on my transaction? Perhaps here the period ranges widely. Often we have as a standard response on our website captured there as 3 months, but it's not to say your application disappears and then after 3 months you have a decision. The important period is the period of 2 weeks, where you will then have an allocated investment professional who will then work with you to reach final conclusion of your transaction. So that's one of the questions that we are often asked, and often the answer is not straight, because there's a lot of negotiation, a lot of discussion and deal structuring as well. So there definitely the important period is the period when you are allocated an individual who works with you as a financial, well, not a financial advisor, but as an investment partner that will then work with you to put together an investment proposal to committee. Another question that is asked is around the interest that is charged, or the cost of finance. So how does the NEF determine this, and what does the NEF charge? Yes, we do have interest charged, but here you will then have to understand that our general range is prime, sometimes prime minus a certain percentage, but generally prime up to prime plus 3.5. And this will be driven by the risk of the business itself, as well as the empowerment dividend, or what we refer as empowerment dividends, women ownership, location of the business, as well as prospects of employment creation. And then, so we take business risk and discount it with that. And then the other question, maybe a difficult question that often comes up, is what is it that you look at, Sizwe, when you assess a transaction? And here I will say we look at, firstly, within our mandate and product criteria, that it must be a majority black-owned business. That's the first thing. And then we've got a few exclusions in terms of criteria, exclusions in terms of manufacturing of arms or related products that are in ammunitions or what you call explosives. We also exclude underground mining, and the other exclusion would be industries that attract sin taxes. So your alcohol and tobacco industries, those will then be excluded. Once the criteria is met, the next step is obviously the deal must be a fit for what we're trying to achieve in terms of empowerment, women ownership, youth ownership, as well as black ownership, obviously. And from there, we look at commercial viability. Now, commercial viability, that's a wide range dependent on the information submitted on that particular transaction. So that's what we look at. And our investment process is quite straightforward. And I'll say from application, receiving documents, and collecting additional documents specific to your transaction. And from there, it's due diligence and conclusion and preparation to go to committee. And our approval process is based on committee system. So it's by majority vote at committee. If most people support the transaction, then it will move ahead to disbursement stage and negotiation and signing of legal agreements. Maybe I'll pause here and take questions mostly, but there's quite a lot that is done at the NEF. I don't think I'll have enough time to really complete the work that is done there. But I'll pause and ask questions. I just thought I should do those follow-ups. Thank you.
Thank you very much for expanding on that video. So there are quite a few questions and we do have 7 minutes to go. So let's see if we can get through these questions, well, as much as you can explain, but quite swiftly. The first one is from Andiswa Matutu, who says, does the NEF do the entrepreneurial training in-house or is it outsourced?
Thank you for that question. Yes, the does that, but it's not in-house. We do use service providers that provide entrepreneurial training. What we do also from our side, perhaps not externally, is we as the investment professionals during our due diligence and meetings with entrepreneurs will identify the weaknesses, and then we will then seek what you call the relevant professionals to it. So we don't do it in-house.
Thank you, Andisa, for that question. You spoke earlier, Sizwe, about the funding process. A question from Marcos Sazana Devet Dludla as how long is the process of this funding?
Okay. I just want to say here the general process we have is 3 months. And when we say 3 months, is the average period, and this is from when you apply to when you eventually receive funding. Because remember, after approval, and often it does happen that entrepreneurs or applicants who have received approvals may not be keen on certain conditions that are imposed by the NEF in the legal agreements, and will want to negotiate those conditions, and hence sometimes that can delay the disbursement. The other issue here within the 3 months period is the amount you applied for. So an application amount of up to 5 million rands that goes through one committee, and so you can understand the period is not 3 months but a little bit less. It's maybe 2 weeks less than the 3 months, perhaps 6 weeks here we will be looking at to approve, and then a further 2 weeks to disperse those funds. If it exceeds 5 million rand, you need now 2 committees to approve an amount of above 5 million rand. So you still have to go to the first committee, and then the second committee then approves that. If it exceeds 15 million rands, then it's 3 committees. And if it exceeds 50 million rands, it's 3 committees. So it's 4 committees. So the situation you are looking at is the amount plays a role, and the nature of transaction plays a role. But I want to make a point here to say the NEF approves transactions on a weekly basis. So I was at committee yesterday. That was our EXCO committee. So on a weekly basis, we have EXCO committee, and this is investment committee, EXCO investment committee, and we have what we call a fund managers investment committee approval on rent. So the committees happen on a weekly basis. It's the process prior, and hence my mention earlier that you have an investment partner, someone who will work with you to conclude the transactions. But on a weekly basis, we have committees.
Thank you very much for that. We have a question from Michelle Vimers, and I'm probably presuming that I'm sorry, Michelle. And that is this fund for buying into a franchise, is this fund for buying into a franchise or starting your own franchise?
Thanks for that question. Franchise, it can either be all of them. What you've mentioned here, buying of a franchise, starting a franchise, all those transactions are transactions that the NEF will consider. So you could be looking at, I'll take a simple example, an engine. So you could be looking at a new service station under the engine brand or franchise. So we will fund that as a startup business, provided that there's viability, or you want to buy an existing filling station, we will also fund that under our franchise funding. Perhaps, I don't know, maybe the question is if you want to set up your own or you want to franchise the current business that you have, maybe to other franchisees. In that case, then we'll consider individual franchisees depending on viability of each, because we're funding also based on the entrepreneurs as well, entrepreneurial assessment and the location of that franchise. But both startup acquisitions, if it's franchise, we will look at it.
Thank you, and thank you, Michelle, for that question. Sizwe, there are so many questions, but we're not going to get time to run through all of them. I'll do one more. Can we email these questions to you? And then would you then be able to answer the questions to these people like that? Would that be okay with you?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And perhaps, Pearl, what was not mentioned earlier, I don't know how much time I have left just to mention something. 2 minutes. We do also partner with other outside funders, like the likes of Transnet. We have a relationship with them. We also have a relationship with with DTIC for certain funds there, where certain grants might be available, but only based on the criteria that is set by our funding partners. So we have several, and I will encourage everyone to visit our website to see the different relationships we have. We have one also with BP, where there's also concessionary funding rates there. And also, so in our assessment, those are the things we take into account. For example, if you want to start if a manufacturing business, there's also concessionary rates that improves your application. It improves the viability of your transaction in terms of the funding structure, because there might be a grant portion that is available from the DTIC. There might be concessionary rates where you're only paying only 1.5% fixed. This is not prime plus 1.5%, but just the 1.5%. So just to be aware that there are situations like that. We also have tourism where 50% of whatever you apply for, if it's in the tourism space, 50% grant. I just wanted to mention that. So visit our website. There's a lot of details regarding those things. Thank you. Thank you, Pearl.
Thank you, Sizwe. Just a comment from Wendy Visela that thanks you guys by assisting and to put together the proposal. She's like, she will be visiting you guys soon. Just a note for my team, if you could take a note of the rest of the questions, so that we can then email this to Sizwe and get back to our delegate.